Hey, welcome. My name is Matthew Peterson. I'm a trainer at Pragmatic Works. We're located in Northeast Florida. We do a lot of training, hackathons, on-demand learning, and what I wanted to do right now is bring you the latest updates for the Power BI desktop for the April 2021 edition. These came out just about a day or two ago, and so I've looked over all the updates, and I want to bring to you some of the features that I think are the most useful right away running out of the gate here. So some of the features we're going to talk about is this new visual. It's the Power Automate visual, which allows you to put a button into your Power BI report and run an automate right from the report itself. We're also going to go over some new updates to the small multiples preview feature. And if you've watched any of our prior monthly digests, you know we pretty much talk about this every month because we're always making new updates to it. Then we're going to talk about some new things. There's some new shapes that you can add into your Power BI reports. The Tech CSV data connector now is generally available for extracting CSV files, and you do it by an example rather than loading the whole file up. Also, we'll talk about the Excel auto table detection and some of the new data connections that are within the Power BI report. So without any further ado, enough talking. Let's see how this is all done. Let's head on over to our report. So the report I'm working with right now, I'm just taking a few metrics here with the sales of my data along with what countries they are coming from. And so what if I want my end user, as they are seeing some of this data, they've made some really good insights, rather than just writing it down, taking a screenshot of it, maybe they want to store this insight in a SharePoint list. And then maybe they want to send an automated email based off of that as well and use these values. Well, that's one of the things that we can do with Power Automate visual. And with this visual, they have some pre-made templates already, but they're going to be adding more and more and more templates to this, but you can also make your own automate completely from scratch. So the first thing that you're going to have to do here in order to use it is you're going to have to download the Power Automate visual. So I already have it in here for this report, but in order to get visuals, if you've never done getting visuals outside, as you hit your ellipses, you'll hit Get More Visuals, and then you will search for it. And so this is the Power Automate visual, and you can see that it is in preview, but once you find it, just click Add, and it will now add it to your report. So now that you're ready to use the visual, we're simply going to hit the Power Automate visual, and right now it's going to give me the directions of what we need to do. And I could scroll through these, but just a quick tip, if you hit the focus mode of your visual, it's a little bit easier to see all the directions, but here's what we're going to be doing. First thing is we're going to have to add some kind of data into the visual itself. Now, you do not have to use this data as part of the Power Automate. However, anything that you do drag into the data section, you can access within the Power Automate if you're trying to log those values. After you've dragged in at least one data field, and again, it does not have to be used within the Automate, but that's what's required to activate it, so to speak. You're going to set up the flow. We're going to test it, and then we will share it out with anyone that we want to use. So here we go. I'm going to go back on over, and I'm going to drag in here. I want to keep track of the sales as well as keep track of the country that they came from. So I'm going to drag in my sales territory country because that's what's in this slicer, and I'm going to keep track of the total sales. So those are the two things, and now I will have access to those two pieces of data within the flow. Once we have that set up, we're going to come down to the visual itself, and we will hit the ellipses, and we will hit Edit. And once we come over here, this will blow it up to the full screen. If we go to the upper left-hand corner, this is where you can make a new flow, but I'm going to use one of their templates for this quick demonstration. I don't know how quick this is, though, but here we go. We're going to create an item for a SharePoint list for Power BI. It's going to ask you for your connections. We'll hit Continue. And anyone who is familiar with Power Automate, this looks very similar to what you already see within regular flow.com. So the first thing that I need to do is put in the site address that I want this data to be stored. So I'll zoom on in. I'm just going to put it in one of my sites, and I'll put it in with one of these lists I have pre-made, Power BI Automate. And now it gives me all of the columns that I have in the SharePoint list. So the only one that's required is the title column in SharePoint. For any SharePoint users, I know that's obvious that we are very used to that. And so when I click on it, these are the things that when somebody clicks the button, these are the options I can bring in. So notice down here, these are those two data fields that I brought in. But what I want for my title, I'm just going to say, let's bring in the individual username. So that way we know who made the insight. And then when I click on total sales, I want to bring in the Power BI data total sales. And it's going to do this. It's going to do an apply to each, and we're going to add more into it. So for the country, notice that right now it's not quite showing up. There it is. We just have to scroll down a little bit. So I want the sales territory country. And then I have down here as well an insight captured because I just want to put a timestamp of when this was done. All right, once we have that set up, we're going to come on over and hit save. And again, you could add more actions to this, but just showing you the new capabilities. So we're going to save this. And after it saves, we will then go back to the report and we're going to test this out. So I'm going to come on over here. We're going to go back to my report. I'm going to make, let's say, Australia 9.06. And then at this point, after we need to test this out, how do we get that done? Well, we're going to have to come back on over into the edit. And see, a lot of times you would think like, oh, it's done, it's been saved. However, all you've done is you have saved it. In order to make sure that it's in the report now, the last step that you have to do is you have to select that flow. And then when you come on over, you're going to hit the apply. Once we hit apply, now it's going to apply that to the button itself. So that is a common thing I could see people getting confused with is they've saved it, they go back and they don't see it. So you have to go back to it and hit apply. Now let's come on over. And now notice we have a button here. So now let's run this flow. So we're going to, you have to hit the control button when you're in the Power BI desktop to use any kind of buttons. So we're going to click on it. It's going to trigger. And it says it is triggering right now. Now, how do we know if it has worked? Well, one, I could go out to my SharePoint site and see if those values are there. But if I come on back into edit, we now will be on, if we click on the flow again, so I'm going to click on my flow. Now we have our run history. And right here, it says it has succeeded. And if we select on it, we can see all the outputs that have come through and create an item. And these are the outputs that have come through. And this is what I was wanting to happen. Title for Matt Peterson. The country is Australia. And we can scroll down and find our sales as well. And then again, if I go into my SharePoint site, it is there, picture perfect. So that is how you test out the flow. And then I would say go to your SharePoint site, see if the data is being recorded the way that you want it to be recorded. You might have to make a few modifications. But then after you are happy with that, you will simply come over here to the run only users. You'll hit edit. And this is where you put in the people that you want to have access to this flow. So if I were to make this report, publish it out, and let's say I shared it with Brian, but I didn't give Brian the edit rights or I didn't share this with him here, then the flow button would not work for him. Apart from that, when I go to the edit in the manage run only permissions, they're only allowed to run the flow. If you want someone else to edit the flow and have access to it to make their own changes to what you have made, then you would come over to your share button. So that is a big overview of the Power Automate visual. This is brand new, so I'm sure there's going to be more and more updates, especially to the templates. I'm sure you'll start seeing out on the forums all these ideas that people are coming up with to do with the flow button itself. So that is the first part that was in this new update. The second part in the update that I want to talk about is our small multiples preview. So in our small multiples, the new capability is it can now be used with line and clustered stack column charts, so your combo charts. Now again, this is a preview feature. So if you're not seeing small multiples, you're going to have to go to your options and settings, options, and then under preview features, you're going to have to turn on your small multiple. So this is still in preview. So let's take a look. This would be the original line and stack column chart that I would have used where I'm looking at the different years. I am tracking in here the sales territory country are my columns. I'm tracking the sales amount overall and my profit margin. Now, what if this is nice, but now with this small multiples preview, what I can do is instead of having sales territory country as the column series, let's move it down into small multiples and see how this changes out. So now I'm looking at just one country at a time because that's what your small multiples will do. It breaks down your overall visual into smaller visuals based on this one field. And right now I have it as sales territory country. But I still see the sales amount for my column values, and it's still based on the calendar year because that is my axis. And I still have the profit margin. So it's a nice little breakdown. And this was the new visual that small multiples are part of. But apart from that, there is now something else available to all of the visuals that use small multiples. There is some feedback in terms of the padding of the visuals themselves, the spacing in between these small multiples. And so they've made an update to this. And where you will access that padding feature is with your visual selected, you'll come on over into the formatting section, and then you will go into the grid layout. And in the grid layout, you now can change the grid padding. And you could do it just basic overall. So let's say I change this from 12. I'll make it really big here just to show what it does. So you can see we now have a bigger separation between our multiples. And I'll come out so it's a little bit easier to see. So there's 0, gets them really close. If we go all the way out, makes them a lot larger, wider apart here. And that's just the basic. However, if you want to have more control over all the different parts of the padding, then if you click on underneath here, and let me get out of the way again. If you click on the advanced padding options and turn it to on, now you can change just the inner, the outer, the rows of the inner, the rows of the outers, the columns as well. So let's say I wanted the row padding for the outer to be a little bit larger. And so we see a larger for the rows. So we have a bigger separation between the calendar year and the visuals themselves. So those are the new enhancements that they have made in terms of the small multiples preview. Again, it's preview feature. You now can do it for combo charts, and now you have more access over the padding features, which you did not have back in the March version. The next thing that's a big deal, especially for anyone who's really good with design and was kind of frustrated with the amount of shapes that you had when putting into Power BI reports. So I know some people would use workarounds where they would bring in their own images. However, Power BI now has a new feature where, not a new feature, they've updated the shapes feature. So let me show you the old one. So these are the old shapes. I just put in 4 of the different shapes that when you would bring in, this is what you would have. These are the basic ones. There's, I think, 4 or 5 different shapes you had the ability to change here. But now there are new shapes. So this is the old one. So now if I click on, so now if you open up any old report in the new version and you click on one of your shapes, you are going to have this option over in your format shape area to convert. Do you want to convert that old shape to the new shape? Well, let's see what it looks like. So we'll hit convert here. Then it's going to give us an option. Hey, do you want to convert all of your shapes in the report? So I'm going to do that for now, but we could just convert one at a time. You could control select as well. If you had 5 of the 8 that you wanted to convert, but the other 3 you wanted to leave alone, you can control select those 5 visuals and then hit that convert button. And notice you can always undo and go back to the older version. So when I hit convert here, give it a moment. And so now they have been converted. You might be saying, well, that doesn't look much different. Well, I didn't show, but over here, there's a lot more options now with these shapes. We have many more options in terms of we can do, let me zoom in for you. We now have a rotation, we have glow, we have shadow, and we also have more in terms of the text of things we can do. So if I take this one, this looks nice. If I turn the text to on, I can put in some random text here. So I'll just make this random text and we put it in and we can change the font color around, something around here. And then that's something we can add to it. And these visuals look pretty nice. However, let's see what the new shapes are that we can put in. So I'm going to make a new page at this point, and we're going to go to the insert ribbon. And now under shapes, see, we have a whole lot more shapes than what we did. And we also have these rounded edges as well. And again, that big text option, which we didn't have for the old shapes. So let's just put in something here. We'll go with this guy. and we'll bring it around. Now the colors, just to let you know about the colors that you are seeing within your shapes. The default colors are going to be your data theme color 1. So whatever your data theme color 1 is, that is going to be the new color that's in your shape. The outline color is going to be your theme color 1, but the 25% darker. And your outline weight will always be 1 point, but you can change all of those effects in the shape itself. So if we come on over, let's add some text in here. And again, this time I'll make it more random text, and we'll make it fairly large. All right. And so some of the other features, just to show them out real quickly, you can bring in a shadow here. So now we have that shadow going around. You also have the glow effect. So you've got, like those lights glowing here for you. And what I like is the rotation. And on the rotation, you can do text rotation. So as you see, as we're going around and around 360 degrees, you have the text rotation, but you also have shape rotation too. So you have lots of freedom here and just regular rotation. So obviously, this is something that you're going to play with. For those of you that are really good with design, go for it. I'm not the best at design, thus the more random text in this crazy looking shape. But for my design people, I think this is going to be a great feature for you to start playing around with. All right, now let's go back into our other report. And the next thing I want to talk about is that text CSV option. And so this is now generally available. And so this was something that I've been working with over the past months or so. But just in case you didn't know about it, because maybe you didn't have that preview feature turned on, now it's just part of the program. So let me show you what it can do. So I'm going to come up here to get data, and I'm going to bring in a text CSV file. And it's going to be in my desktop, and I'm going to bring in this one right here. I'm going to click on open. And what this allows us to do is at the very bottom, you have this extract table using examples. So if you don't want to go straight into the transform data, but you just want to start kind of fleshing and taking things out at this moment in time, because sometimes your CSV files are a little bit crazy, your text files. This one's a fairly nice one. It's fairly well organized, but I've seen some text CSV files where the columns are all over the place. There is real no organization per se, and it's really hard to get into the transform editor and start working with it. So we can use this extract table using examples. And what we do is we just decide what do we want for column 1. So let's say I want that Southeast, I want the names of these hospitals here. So if I do a double click and I type in Southeast Alabama Medical Center, that looks like what the first one is. And if I hit enter, it says we were unable to extract the sample value you provided. That's okay. Sometimes that is going to happen, and you are now going to have to go in and try to rechange. So now that maybe let me just click on this one. So Southeast Alabama, and now hit enter. There we go. So I must have had a typo in there somewhere, or they didn't like it, and that's okay. And it might have been because of how I was not using the full caps. That's an easy transform that we can fix within the Power Query Editor. And then if I want to bring in another column, let's say I want to bring in the abbreviations for the states. That's the only other thing I need in here. So if I double click in column 2 and start typing in, I want AL for Alabama. And there we go. We're going to get all of the ALs for Alabama. And this is looking good. And then obviously we would go in at this point. Once you make everything that you want, from here you've extracted what you need. You click transform data, and it will then take you into the Power Query Editor where you can start to do the transforms. But this is really just pulling out what information do you want from that text CSV file. The other thing is the generally available now is the Excel feature, where if your data in Excel wasn't formatted as a table, they were just sheets, and maybe there was just random parts on the sheet, Power BI will now attempt to look at that Excel file and figure out what tables could possibly be there that just weren't formatted as tables. So let me show you this one here. So I'm going to go into Excel, and I've got one where I just made a quick little Excel file. And as it makes this connection, what we see at the top, and I'll come off screen again, is we have sheet 1, and I'm going to click on sheet 1. And so notice on sheet 1, I don't have anything in column 1, 2, or 3, but then over And these columns over here, I have agency, date, and sales. And then down here, I also have some employee information that was on a separate part of the sheet. So could I bring this whole sheet in and start doing transforms on it? I could, but it's going to be, quite a few transform steps I'm going to need to make in order to get these individual tables or queries on their own. However, with this auto table detection tool, look at this. So if I click on sheet 1, it has pulled that table picture perfect for me. If I do the other one, it has done that as well. So now this gives me the capability of being able to do this at a quicker rate and not have to go through all of the Power Query steps. And less applied steps is always better for our report as well if we're still getting to the same solution. This is also feature is with JSON connections too. So if you bring in a JSON file, it will use this auto table detection. So those are the main features within the Power BI desktop that were updated this month. Some of the other things that you can be on the lookout for is when you go out to the service, they're going to be putting in a new feature of when you share a report, you can now share a report with a link. So if you've ever used, SharePoint and you share a file from SharePoint and it gives you that pop-up of share the link and it says like anyone can view, anyone can edit, etc. You're going to have that same kind of user experience out on the service instead of using the regular dialog box that comes off to the side where you type in the email addresses, you make your security settings, and you click share for direct access. So that's something that is coming out. And you might already have that feature now, but everyone's service gets updated at different times. Mine hasn't been currently updated at that point, so I can't show it off to you. Other than that, the new, if you watched last month's digest, we talked about how you can connect to a Power BI data set. And instead of using it in a live connection, you can use direct query as well with your Azure Analysis Services. The one thing they've added is if it has a perspective in your Azure Analysis Services, if you have a perspective, you now can connect to that perspective as well using direct query. And then there's 2 data connections. One was called Soft1 BI, and the other is Bloomberg Data and Analytics. So if you or your company use any data from there, you now have the ability to bring that data into the Power BI desktop. So other than that, those are all the main features that I thought I would like to highlight for you this month. Just to let you know, if you're interested in any training, any on-demand learning, any hackathons, reach out to us. We would love to help your organization or you yourself reach the goals that you're trying to reach. And also let us know in the comments any of the features that you really like or maybe you want some more information about. Again, these are just all the newest ones out there. I'm sure there's going to be more information coming about each one of these. But until then, we hope to see you in the next monthly digest and we hope to connect with you soon.